Good morning and welcome to Pinecrest Village. My name is Phil and I'm the conductor of the train that we're going to be looking at in a different segment. Right now we're in Collins Depot. Collins Depot was built in the 1870s and is mostly made of wood. You will also see some glass windows, which were also popular at that time. Collins Depot. Collins is located just west of here from Manitowoc. And they have their own little depot and their own little train line that went through it. In the depot, we have several different segments. We have a ticket agent's office, we have a baggage room, and we have the waiting room. The waiting room is what we're in right now, and obviously the people would be waiting in here for their train. Now, let's take a look around and see what we have. We have benches where the people would sit, and you'll notice this bench has several dividers, and that wasn't so people could have their individual seat, although it did work for that. That was so that people wouldn't lie down and sleep and take up room for the other visitors. When you would come in, you put your baggage underneath the seat where you sat, and you would sit down. Some of the things you could do, especially if the train was late, you could do things like play card games, you could read a book, you could play rock, paper, scissors, you could talk to other people and see where they're from and where they're going. One of the items we have in here is a stove. The stove was used to keep the depot warm because they didn't have central heating like we have today. And what you would do is you would open up the stove and you would put the wood in there and you would start the wood on fire with paper and tinder, and what that would do is of course create heat in the winter time. And you'll notice up on the top we have an opening space and on the bottom. And what would happen is the heat would circulate and also keep the next room warm as well. Alright, the other thing we had to worry about was light. How would you get light in here? Because they didn't have light bulbs back then. Okay, they would use a lantern such as this that would be filled with kerosene, and they would light the wick and that would produce light. Another way to get light in during the day, of course, is why they have the big windows in the waiting room and throughout the depot. Okay, now we also have a picture of our engine up on the wall. This was the engine 321, which we will look at later on. Engine 321 was built in Rhode Island, and it was built in 1887. Okay, that was when the engine was brand new, just delivered, and we have our switchman on the front, and we have our engineer up in the cab. And we'll explain more about the engine in a later segment. Now, what people would do, obviously, is they would come up and they would purchase a ticket to take a ride to other areas. And they would go up to the station agent's window and they would ask for a ticket to go to, say, from here to Manitowoc, which was just a short ride, but it was still a long way to walk. They could go to places like Manitowoc. Maybe for 5 cents they would buy a ticket and go to Manitowoc. They could go to Appleton, and maybe that would cost them 25 cents for a ticket to go to Appleton. They could easily go to Milwaukee. Milwaukee was a fair distance on a train, but it was easier than walking or taking a horse. So all of that was involved with the ticket. And then of course on the train you could do other things like there were times when meals were available if it was a long enough drive, and you would just visit with people again or read a book or whatever you wanted to do in that area. We also have a board, a train board, which would tell us the engine number, where it's headed to, and what time it was due in, and if it was late. If we look at our train here, our board, we have 317 was due at 5:55 a.m. and it's 10 to 15 minutes late. 321 due at 8:20 and it's on time. and so forth. So you go through all that different areas, and it would let you know when the train was coming and if it was later